It is time to talk some Miami football. We do so with Cam Underwood from State of the U. You can join him on SB Nation's platform for Miami Athletics. And the record's been perfect since week one, Cam, but that was a near perfect performance on Saturday night against Notre Dame. How do you, in any way, capsulize what transpired there?
First of all, thanks for having me back. Secondly, that was just awesome from front to back. I got to the stadium nice and early, hit a couple tailgates, met a couple State of the U readers, people who even watch these videos. So that was pretty cool. Didn't get to meet everybody because, there's only one of me and a lot of them. But that's a good thing, that we have people, reading and watching and everything. But from the moment that I got there, you could just feel the electricity in the air. A couple of my friends were like, no, I'm very calm about the game. They were like, yeah, no, they were more confident going into the Notre Dame game than the week previous against Virginia Tech because we'd seen the talent and performance of this team already. And we just came out and smacked them. It was so good. It was surreal. Almost because Miami's been through a lot, man. The last half of Larry Coker's tenure was bad. Randy Shannon's entire tenure was bad. Al Golden's pretty much entire tenure was bad. So you're talking 11, 12, 13 years since you've seen something like that, and it was crazy. It was the loudest that Hard Rock Stadium has ever been. A couple of journalists even tweeted, full-time beat writers. They said, "Hey, the press box is shaking." And the press box doesn't overhang anything. It's not like it's an upper deck and it's doing one of these. It's part of the full construction. So that means the whole stadium was doing this, just up and down. And it was awesome, man. I mean, I'm not saying that this team is as talented or they're not performing to the same level as a 2001 Miami team. But that performance was like a 01-02 Miami, a team with high ranking, with all this bravado. Brandon Wimbush talking stuff. You saw whichever one of their coaches was talking bad and cussing the whole team out, talking about F the turnover chain, F this, F that. We're going to go F them up. And it was the exact opposite. And Miami has not seen anything like that in a long time. And it really – and I was sitting with my buddy in the stands, and I turned to him and I said, this feels like 2001. And he's not from Miami. He's just a Miami fan. It was his first game ever, actually. So he looked at me and said, wait, what? And I said, dude, I'm telling you, back when I was in undergrad, this is what it felt like every week. And it was phenomenal. I mean, that whole first half, and I think we left about 20 points on the board in the first half between just some misplays and, that second play of the game interception, which was right there, and we didn't get it. And that would have been, that you could count that as 7 points. And I just remember because where I was sitting was behind the Notre Dame offense in that second quarter. So they're going to the west side. And on that pick six, I started screaming before he even threw the ball because you could see it from where I was sitting that they're playing zone, hanging back, and he bandy baited the whichever that was booked, the backup quarterback, baited him into it, sat there like a panther in waiting, and he looked over to that one open receiver, and I just said, oh, ah! And I'm just screaming, and you just saw it, and the whole place went absolutely bananas. It was rocking, it was jumping, that was all of everything that we've been through made that moment so sweet. 48-0 in the last game at the Orange Bowl, and 58-0 to Clemson, and losing 9-6 to South Florida, 6 years ago or 7 years ago. All that stuff, that was the cathartic experience that was needed to just get that off of our conscience, off of our psyche, and just dominate and dance at somebody else's expense. And some of the likes of Notre Dame, who I hate, and almost got ejected from that stadium last year, got racially profiled, almost got into a couple of fights that weren't my fault, but just people were, whatever, they're going to buck up at me. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to power, but I almost got into a couple of fights. All this, I hate them. I've never liked them. And we do that to them. It was just awesome. I mean, yeah, it was just awesome.
So 01-02, 03 started a bit of a decline, but still a very good team. So not even the Florida State games, even during that time between 03 and 17? Is there that kind of juice?
No, because we only won a couple of those. Like the last time that we won against Florida State prior to this year was 2009 up in Tallahassee. So we haven't seen a win down here against them in a long, long time. And those games had juice, but it was like, oh, we had a loss or two, maybe. The last time that we played them when Duke Johnson broke his leg and we're 7-0, we were up there in 2013, I think that was. So, like, it was, I mean, Florida State has its own different vibe. It's going to be, maybe more Florida State fans. I mean, it was definitely more Florida State fans than there were Notre Dame fans. Rick Neuheisel, I mean, I don't know what he was on then to think that it would be a 50-50 split between Miami fans and Notre Dame fans this week. I think that's just asinine and ridiculous. It was 95% Miami fans with a couple. I mean, I think I saw 40 maybe Notre Dame fans, and it was a complete sellout. So, I mean, yeah, you're going to have more Florida State fans because you have people who live down here. Florida State fans are also, I'm going to give them credit, because in the even years, they buy season tickets to Miami games, so that even if they're not scalping or whatever for like the one games ticket, you can get season tickets for way lower than you would have gotten a StubHub ticket to the Notre Dame game. And, it's usually that kind of price point and things like that. So you're going to have more, and it has its own energy. It's a different kind of energy because you play them all the time. You have this back and forth. Usually, obviously, we're coming off a long losing streak to them and have finally won this year. But it was a different experience this year. It was, I mean, just when you got in the parking lot, it was the whole fan base that was there we were ready to be in full throat, full voice cheering. And it was just, it was like a wild stallion and you're just holding the reins back. And it was just like the first play that happened, you're just going to let that go. And it's similar to the Florida State Miami game down here in Hard Rock and things like that. But I think that this week was a different animal. I think it was a different animal than that. So, obviously, if Florida State's good next year when they come down here, I think it might be a similar kind of scenario. But, yeah, this one was an epic performance on the field, and then also just in the fan kind of perception and energy, too.
Cam Underwood, State of the U, joining us to recap the Miami rout of Notre Dame, and of course looking ahead to Virginia and Pitt to close out the season before the ACC championship game, which of course is official. Clemson on one side and Miami has won the Coastal. Okay. If somebody would have told me that Miami won by 2 scores, let's say it was 24-10, I was guessing that if Miami was going to have a stellar effort, it was going to be something in that range where Notre Dame clearly couldn't throw it. Therefore, they could gang up Miami on the run and really limit them in scoring, but that Miami would also in turn have not difficulty scoring, but wouldn't score in droves. So I picked Miami to win a very close game, like 27-23, I think was my score. So I expected an extremely competitive game. I was not surprised that Brandon Wimbush had his issues. He was erratic. He was all over the place. Some of that was some Miami pressure. Some of that was Miami scheme and Miami talent in the secondary and tight coverage. Some of that was just him. I was surprised that Miami controlled the run even before it became obvious that Wimbush was clueless and that the passing game was going to be as limited as it was, that Miami dominated that much up front to stop that running game.
Yeah, and I think that those guys took it personally, that everybody said that, Brandon Wimbush said before the game, after their previous win, they said, their goal is to dominate, and it's going to be a dominating win against Miami, and you're going to see that. And we're going to run the ball. We're going to do what we want. And I think that those guys on defense took that personally. I think the defensive line took that as a personal affront, that you're going to say that. Everybody was talking about the 2 offensive linemen, McGlinchey and Nelson, I think their names are, play left tackle and left guard. For Notre Dame, everybody was saying that those are great guys and, probably both going to be first-round NFL draft picks and yada, 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 with no conversation to the counterfactual about Miami going 10 deep on the defensive line, and all those guys are going to be NFL players. Nobody was saying that. And I think they really just said, you know what, we're going to be in the lab, we're going to take that personally, and we're going to play with the mean streak and show you that you were wrong. And from the very first snap, they were able to do that. People were talking about 33 trucking with Josh Adams, their running back. He had like 16 carries for 40 yards. I mean, if that's trucking, then I need to find DHL or somebody else to FedEx, because the trucking company not going to work. And it was just really a personal sense of pride. And if you remember back to some of these other videos that we did before the season, the main question on this defense was the secondary, because they lost 4 guys. But you look, and Miami's allowing they're like number 3 in pass defense. They got a ton of interceptions, like a 3rd lowest passer rating against allowed. Malik Young is locked down. Trajan Bandy coming on, making plays. You got Michael Jackson, who might be first, second team All-American at cornerback. Kai was a 3-star recruit out of Alabama years ago, underrated or under the radar, basically, sat his time, abided his time. B. Delaney goes out with the injury. He steps up. And I mean, if Michael Jackson's not first team All-ACC cornerback, then there's something wrong. And he's probably in the conversation for first, second team All-American. And he came out of nowhere this season. So, you do that and you have that progression. Now you're really able to let loose up front and say, we have the trust in those guys in the back end who are catching those interceptions, who are blitzing when appropriate, who are tackling all over the field. Jaquan Johnson, a finalist semifinalist for the, I forget, some award, just watch list came out. So he's one of the top 15 players in America by this award. And everybody was talking about other people, and he's playing also, just like Michael Jackson, to a first-team All-American elite level. I don't think that there's a safety in this time zone, maybe, who's playing as good football as Jaquan Johnson. So now those guys are doing better, and the guys up front, now they can press. They can do whatever they want to do. They're getting up the field because Notre Dame wasn't able to block them all day. You got the linebackers flying around. They're able to play drop zone coverage, or they're going to blitz, and you can play some games like that. And the defense really has been the calling card of this team. And this is the thing. If you remember Miami teams of the past that were really good, it was the defense that stifled everybody, and then the defense or offense was able to get rolling. That's really what we're seeing now. And, yeah, I mean, just Notre Dame, they maybe learned a lesson in humility now, because everybody, their fan base and their players and their coaches, everybody was talking stuff. Everybody was loud and proud with their bravado, and we shut that up right quick. So, I think that they have a lesson in humility, and you see that the defensive line for Miami, which was derided, which people say there was no comparison to that which Georgia presented to Notre Dame in their other previous loss. That's false. Miami has one of the best defensive lines, one of the best front sevens, one of the best defenses in America, and you saw that. And I think it was because of Notre Dame running their mouth that those guys really took it as a personal affront. And you saw what happens when they're able to really put everything together on defense. You get a performance like that, which should have been a shutout, by the way. But some guys went for some kill shots. They went out of their lines or out of their gaps to play, for a hero play. And I was sitting. Okay, this is not a brag, but like my friend who flew down from Toronto, we were going to get seats in like the 30th row. He went behind my back, didn't tell me, got front row seats right on the 20-yard line. So I was right down close. Now, I'm not saying that to stunt. I'm saying that to say I could hear Craig Kulagowski and Manny Diaz verbally undressing the defensive line after that touchdown drive. And there was some not too clean language that was being said, but the story was, you guys are going for individual glory, and that means that you're not doing your job. And the fact that you didn't do your job is the only reason that they scored. And that didn't meet their level of satisfaction, and filth. But after that, Jonathan Garvin went straight out, got that second straight strip sack with a recovery, second game in a row that he had one of those. That's a true freshman who beat your number 1 draft pick at left tackle and things like that. So I liked that. And, yeah, you talked about Miami's defense, and you got smacked.
Well, it's foolish to talk smack. It's fun, but it comes back to bite you. So correct me if I'm wrong. If Miami went on the field against any one of about 15 to 20 teams in America, you may be confident that they're going to win that game, but you wouldn't know for sure. Based on the results of their games, based on the results of your games, it could be an extremely good game. Case in point, Notre Dame did lose the one game against Georgia, but Georgia was ranked number 1. Did they deserve to be number 1? Well, they just lost a game, and who knows how good they are. We generally think they're one of the 5 or 10 best teams in America. I think most people would be comfortable to say Georgia's one of the 5 or 10 best teams in America. Notre Dame played them really well. It was a 1-point game. Notre Dame knocked out an ACC team that's one of the better teams in the ACC in North Carolina State, beat them by 3 touchdowns. They beat a USC team that might be a little dysfunctional, but they're extremely, extremely talented, and crushed them by 35 points. I think they just ran into just a lot going on here, a very talented, fast, dynamic team, but that was also laser focused and hungry and mad and ready to roll.
Yeah. And, again, I'm not going to say you personally, but in general, like the impersonal maybe you don't talk that stuff. Maybe you don't give the other team bulletin board material. And all those statements you said about Notre Dame and who they played are true. And I agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be confident in my team, in the Miami Hurricanes. If they do what needs to be done, I really think that going into pretty much any game, they can be successful. But you had the added portion of things where Miami was only ranked 7th at 8-0 at the time. One of only 5 undefeated teams, now 4 in America, but ranked very lowly behind teams that lost games. And on top of that, Notre Dame was running their mouths. So it really became a thing where Miami went to prove a point, and they did. And the last thing I want to say is I know that the offense could have scored more. And when I did my rewatch, Miami left between 20 and 35 points on the board, between missed field goal or settling for field goals instead of touchdowns or not completing a drive or whatever. So that game could have been really, really, really worse. And in the second half, Miami ran the ball 29 times. Like, it was Operation Shutdown. Like, it could, if we would have done the same things that we had done on offense previously in the first half, you're talking, I mean, we scored 41 anyway. So you're talking 50, 60, 70 maybe. I mean, it was that kind of a night where if we really wanted to, it was a name your score kind of a thing. But kind of a little bit of mercy and a little bit of trying to avoid a catastrophic error, Miami really went into shutdown mode for a large part of the second half. So I know that people are like, oh, well, they only did this and Miami shut down the offense for large part for pretty much, that first drive of the second half, came out, scored a touchdown. That's when DJ Dallas hit the Superman and dove in to the end zone. There was the drive after Notre Dame scored their touchdown where we came down and DJ Dallas scored his second touchdown to ice the game at 41-8, excuse me. I mean, so you're talking 2 drives that I think totaled 8 minutes. So for 22 minutes of the second half, we were in Operation Shutdown. And we won by 5 touchdowns. That's the kind of performance that it was. But either way, it was a good time and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I try to, in a game like this, try to distinguish the garbage time and just weed that out as being who knows what really meant what, who was playing hard, what the coaches were calling. It didn't even matter at that point. So when it mattered, when we know that both teams were firing off the ball and it mattered, Notre Dame came out on that first drive. I'll call it a drive. It was 35 yards. They got 2 or 3 first downs. They hit on a couple passes, and they really missed on a play that they could have taken the lead on.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. No, that was a miscommunication on the defense. Oh, I forgot about that. He was
like
wide
a post
open
pattern to, I think it was Equinemi and St. Brown, I think.
Yeah.
And they missed on that play. And Wimbush missed it, and he was erratic the entire game. And again, a lot of that was caused by Miami. After that, 3 plays and out, punt, interception after 3 plays. 3 plays, 5 yards out, 7 plays, 15 yards. So basically they were messing around with penalties and who knows, got 1 first down, then probably thrown for a huge loss. So really nothing there. 1 play in the pick. That was the 27 or the 17-0. So that was 1 play in a pick there. So that wasn't the pick 6. Then 3 plays, 3 yards. There's just nothing here. Then the interception for the touchdown right before the half. So everything's 3 and out after the first, there was 1 first down in there for 7 plays. But when it counted up to 27-0, there was a semblance of a drive and a missed touchdown throw. And then there was nothing.
Yeah.
Out of the Irish.
That was it. I forgot about, that touchdown or the would have been touchdown was coming directly my way towards the end zone or near where I was sitting and everything. Yeah. I forgot about that. But, got to hit that throw. Guy was open by 10 yards. You can't miss it. And it was kind of reminiscent of when Miami went up to Soldier Field in, what was that, 2011, and Philip Dorsett dropped a 9 route up the sideline on the first drive against Notre Dame, or playing, neutral site, and then punted on that drive and then got blown out. So it was, the shoe was on the other foot kind of thing, where they missed that throw and they got blown out. So, yeah.
Hey, Kim, you talked about the secondary. So if you had to break down every unit on the team, would that be the unit that you were the most pleasantly surprised about?
I would say it's between the secondary and the offensive line. Both of those have really stepped up. You recast a couple people on the offensive line. You switch Casey McDermott and Trevor Darling. So now McDermott's at left tackle, Darling's inside the left guard, which is opposite of what they had been previously. Nick Linder, younger brother of Brandon Linder, who signed a huge NFL contract. He got beat out for the center job by Tyler Gauthier. Linder's now going to transfer next year as a grad transfer somewhere else. You bring in Navon Donaldson, who's a gigantic human being at like 6'6", 355 as a true freshman. And then Tyree St. Louis taking over at right tackle. He finished the year at right tackle after Sonny Adogwu got injured. That group has really, really stepped up. There's very few times that you really are saying something negative about the offensive line, whereas in the past, the errors have been so magnificently sized. They're like just so gigantic that you can't miss that. Now, I'm not saying that there have not been errors. There's been a couple of things, but they played a clean game last game. The only penalty was a delay of game on DJ Dallas when he came in at Wildcat quarterback and lost sight of the 40-second play clock. That was it. So offensive line has really, really stepped up. If you're looking at Pro Football Focus, they do different rankings and grading and things like that. And you have guys on the offensive line who are routinely towards the top of the ACC weekly on their performance, which is definitely a welcome change. It was just, a matter of everybody stepping up, really. Jaquan Johnson, probably the best player in that secondary. Thought he got some rotation time before, but you really want to see him step up and develop. And he has Sheldrick Redwine going inside the safety from cornerback, which fits his skill set better. But he's really stepped up. D. Delaney, when he's been in, the first 2 games were bad. He had a lot of miscommunications. After that, he's been locked down. He's missed a couple of games and a little bit of time because of a knee or leg injury, but even he's coming on. Michael Jackson, like I said, is a borderline first-team All-American in his performance. Malik Young is just locking everybody down everywhere. Trajan Bandy stepping up. Javonte Dean stepping up. So we're 5 deep at cornerback now when we were like 1.5 at deep over the summer that we knew and could count on. And it's just really, really developed. So, and then guys behind them, you have Amari Carter, who's really coming on into his own as a true freshman safety. And Manny Diaz is playing the kind of games with him where on that interception, that pick 6 by Bandy, Amari Carter, who's a safety, he's like 6'2", 185 pounds, is lined up at nose guard over the center, fakes a rush, comes back, and he's going to be that spy with his heels at 3 yards for the quarterback in case they want to run. Why? Because Notre Dame quarterbacks run. But it wasn't just on that one play. A couple guys who took some screenshots, you saw that 3 or 4 or 5 times where you're inverting a safety all the way down to nose guard, and now you're playing games with him. And that's from the secondary. That's a true freshman who just got on campus. And his versatility is is being used to let the defense do a lot of different things. And that's really just kind of indicative of the secondary and the progression of all those players back there. So between offensive line and secondary, those are definitely the 2 units where I'm most pleasantly surprised. And I would be remiss if I did not also mention quarterback, because as you all know, I was not the biggest proponent of Malik Rozier coming into this season, and he's done nothing but win. He's 10-0 as Miami Hurricanes quarterback. He's a vocal leader for this team, and he played his ass off last week and the week before, and pretty much for the majority of the season. Now, there have been cold spells. There has been first half Malik that we talked about previously. I'm not saying it's been perfect, but if we're talking about units that have exceeded my expectations, yeah, you have to put quarterback in that conversation as well.
And the quarterback's the position, along with you could mention anybody that plays in space. It's easy to see as the viewer, not watching coach's tape, but just actually watching the game. You can point out the errors. When a DB was burned, when a wide receiver drops a pass, or can't outfight the defender for the football. Sometimes when a left tackle on the edge gets burned and run around and gives up a sack. And obviously when the quarterback misses throws or makes bad reads and bad decisions, but there are guys all over the place. Nobody is grading out perfection, but it's easy to say, well, the quarterback went 21 for 34. What's wrong with him? He missed these 6 throws. Well, they pretty much, you got Baker Mayfield and a few others, but they pretty much across the board are missing 5 or 6 throws a game. There's nothing wrong. As long as they're not in crucial situations and they're not crucial misses like throwing them to the other guy going the other way, you can live with that. You have to live with that. Tom Brady's missing 5 throws a game. Everybody does.
I mean, and they're college quarterbacks. So just like, everybody wants to talk about college kickers, these guys are not professional level players yet. You can debate the should college players be paid thing, but their skills have not reached the professional level yet. So people are going to miss things. But like you're talking about, if you miss a throw, you throw a ground ball, you just miss a guy who's open or something like that. Okay, fine, that happens. If you miss a throw like Ian Book did and he doesn't see the defender and he throws it to somebody wearing a different color jersey who's running back and they're queuing up the band and now you're changing the scoreboard, that's a different kind of thing. But yeah, all in all, like I said, I think Malik Rozier has exceeded my expectations at quarterback, along with those on the offensive line and in the secondary as well.
Yeah, that was pretty much a 10-point play by Book. They were very close to field goal range. I think it was a 65-yard pick six going the other way. So the 35-yard line where it was picked off could have scored a field goal versus 7 points the other way.
Yeah.
Big play in the game wouldn't have mattered. Miami was in control, dominating regardless, but at least would have given a little bit of hope to some people out there. All right, a date against Virginia as we talked to Cam Underwood, State of the U, breaking down Miami football with the Canes undefeated and ranked, I don't even know. It's number 3 in the country, right? Number 3 in the college football playoff rankings because a nod was given to that Clemson team that's lost a game to Syracuse. You guys played Syracuse, right?
We played them the week after they played Clemson and we won.
Yes.
So, that's what happened. But, you're number 2 in both polls. But the one that counts, the college football playoff, Miami is 3rd. And I wrote about that on the website where, basically, and I think I said this on here last week, Miami is basically the Titans from Remember the Titans, where if you win out, everything is fine. We're not going to drop you. We're not going to, fire you, metaphorically, as they were talking to the coach in that movie. But any loss and you're done. And I think that's pretty much what the committee is saying by how they're ranking Miami. So I don't foresee that there's a way where both Clemson and Miami make it to the college football playoff. And that is the matchup on December 2nd. But like you were leading into, we do have games before that. So we do need to leave our focus in the immediate, in the present, and then leave the future for the future. Because, whatever happens on Saturday, we're still going to reach the ACC championship game and play Clemson. Hopefully that game still has a measure of consequence because Miami has won both of the intermediary games before we reach there.
So one of which is Virginia in Miami, the Cavaliers putting together for them a very good season. So this has been a down and out program, arguably the worst in the ACC over the last 4 or 5 years, but they're a fine 6-4 right now with some credible wins. So you look at Virginia, and I'm not expecting you to go personnel deep, too deep across the depth chart, both sides of the football, Cam, when we talk Virginia. I've seen very spotty here and there, a couple plays here, a couple plays there with Virginia. They did play a Friday night early in the season to give us some indication that Bronco Mendenhall can coach. He obviously did a job at BYU. He's taken over a team, 2-10 his first season, and now he's got something going at Virginia. They're not an extremely talented team, but I'm sure he's just tightened things up and have these boys playing at a much higher efficiency level. They're not explosive on offense. They dink and dunk you all over the field. They don't have that kind of personnel to take you downfield. They've got a quarterback in Kurt, 21 touchdowns, 7 picks, 59%. Jordan Ellison, a nice running back, nothing special there at about 4.2 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns. But out of the gate, a win in week 2 or 3 against Boise State on the road on the blue carpet, a team that's now in the top 25. Just a few weeks ago, beat Georgia Tech, a team that obviously took Miami to the wire, played within a couple touchdowns of Clemson, and Georgia Tech's a credible team, and Virginia was able to win that game. Had to try to chase down Lamar Jackson this past week unsuccessfully in one. So it is an opponent. It is a decent opponent. I'm going to say one of the top 40 to 45 teams in the country, something in that range. So there's not a comparison. Miami's decidedly better, but if circumstances work out, if you're not at least playing your C game, then maybe Virginia provides some resistance. So it can't be overlooked.
Yeah, and I think, every game matters. And first of all, shout out to Louisville. Thank you for beating them last week and sewing up the ACC Coastal Division for us this week. So before we even played a game, or before we even kicked off against Notre Dame, we already knew that we were ACC Coastal Division champions for the first time in program history, or, since we came over. So that's great. But yeah, Miami just needs to do what we need to do. And I've really been a proponent of that. Miami has the best talent in our division of the Atlantic Coast Conference. We're up there with Clemson and Florida State on the level of talent on this roster. Could use a little bit more depth of that talent, but when you look at the guys across the board, and I know that people are, because you're watching Miami play in prime time more and more. This is a program that now, for winning reasons, has become back to the forefront. So we were talking about, in years past, how Miami is still relevant even if they're not winning. Now you're winning and relevant, and everybody's hating on the turnover chain. You got the song, and all these people are wearing these things. They're doing all these different edits. I think there's like a filter on Snapchat. There's like a panel thing on your phone for Instagram, like a frame and things like that have the turnover chain. So Miami is out there a lot. So people are watching that. So that Miami has the talent advantage. This is going to be a game where Miami is really going to have to not rely on the crowd. And I know that the crowd is going to be there because it's senior day. So we're sending off our seniors, hopefully with a victory, concluding an undefeated season at the Rock this year, and then moving on to Pittsburgh in the regular season finale. But this is really going to test the personal fortitude of these guys, where, okay, we got up for a big game against Virginia Tech, blew them out. Got up for a larger game, the biggest game this program has seen in more than a decade, against Notre Dame, really blew them out. Now it's senior day. We're going to have some energy there, but we're going to have to really be self-starters and propel ourselves for reasons. Not for, okay, well, we're having game day on campus, which was awesome, and Maria Taylor on the sidelines, and Ed Reed, who was right in front of my section and everything. You got all the 300 former Hurricanes there. You got 600 something recruits. We have all this buzz, and there's going to be people there, but it's not going to be the same. So they're really going to have to say to themselves, we want to play for a national championship, or have the chance to. And the only way that we get to this Clemson game, which is going to probably be a college football playoff quarterfinal by default, because the winner of that game is probably going to go to the playoff and the loser of the game is not. To get to the college football playoff quarterfinal, also known as the ACC championship game, and have that consequence, we have to win. So that means we have to push each other now. When that's it. So Jaquan Johnson, who is one of the vocal leaders on this team, one of the best players on this team, he said, look, people can hate us. They can rank us wherever. They can respect us or not. We're going to play pissed off anyway. And I love hearing that from the defense, because if they're playing with that chip on their shoulder and that kind of thing, they're going to be able to do that. Now, I got a little bit of flack last week in a question and answer with our SB Nation Notre Dame site, because they asked me about how Miami's passing game would match up against some of the people in Notre Dame secondary. And did I know their names and what about them? And I said, no, I don't. And I really don't need to, because I'm confident in the fact of, if Miami does what we need to do, then they're going to be successful, because we've seen it against Syracuse. We've seen it against Florida State, who, while not necessarily good this year, has talent all over the field. We saw it against Virginia Tech, whose defense is their calling card. And, they have guys with names that you probably know, and we did whatever we wanted there against Notre Dame. Well, now we did that. So I think it's going to be the same kind of thing against Virginia. Miami definitely has the talent advantage. I know that Quinn Blanding is like a 17th year senior over there at safety. He's a very good player, somebody to watch out for. But he's like the single guy on their team who has like a really, really high level of talent. So I think that Miami is really going to have to be self-starters. They're going to have that personal fortitude to go out there and perform without the extrinsic push of the fans and the recruiting and the whole hoopla around the game. But I'm very confident in the talent. I'm very confident in the scheme. I'm very confident in the coaching staff to be able to get that and make that happen.
Quinn Blanding, 95 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, one of the very best safeties in college football. Micah Kaiser leads them in tackles. The Cavaliers, 104, 8 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. And Brenton Nelson, their interception leader, with 4 and 4 passes defensed. Cam Underwood, State of the U, breaking down Miami, taking on Virginia. It's a noon game, national television, noon Eastern time, against the 6-4 Cavaliers, who are bowl bound. But Miami, ACC championship game bound. And I will not prolong the conversation here, Cam. I think we've come to a good place, but I will say that I totally respect you putting Miami in the position to needing to win the ACC championship game. That's the way, in a sense, it should be. But if Miami lost a close game against Clemson, I could certainly make an easy argument. It, of course, is not played within a silo. There are other things happening around the country that change the narrative and the comparisons. But under basic conditions, what we generally expect to have happen in other conferences, I could make the case for Miami as a one-loss team that lost to what would be the number 2 team in the country, at least by a close margin, that they would deserve a look at the college football playoff Final Four.
I hear you, and I hope that that's true, but life is not about deserve, and life is not fair, and I honestly don't think that that's going to happen. I think that this committee is looking for every reason why Miami should be lower as a ranking, why they should be left out or anything like that. If you're talking about this week even, where you're talking about all these things with Clemson, and, okay, well, they have this many top 50 wins, and they did this, and, okay, you love their win at Auburn, and Auburn who started badly, and you're talking about, hey, maybe the coaching staff might need change and the head coach might be on the hot seat and then things like that. But you're doing all these things and having all these conversations and ignoring the fact that Clemson lost to an objectively bad Syracuse team. It's to the point where I said that, and our friend John Casillo from the SB Nation blog with the longest name ever, Troy Nunes, is an absolute magician. He even said, yeah, you kind of have to say that when you're talking about Clemson this year. And it's funny because all these points of conversation of the contrarian nature that I was talking about last week came to fruition. You're talking about everything with Clemson except for the fact that they lost. You talk about Alabama, hey, they won a close game, so that shows championship pedigree. Miami won close games, and you're talking about the opposite. And Pick Six Previews on Twitter, I think that is their full handle, they put up a blind resume comparison. And the comparison that it should be right now is Miami and Alabama. That's what it should be for 1 and 2. It should not be Clemson. I'm sorry. At current, they lost a game to a bad team. That's it. You talk about, okay, if Miami beats Virginia Tech and Notre Dame, and maybe convincingly, then we'll reevaluate that. Beat both of them convincingly. Now the conversation is flipped to, well, we'll see if Miami's able to get up when it's not a primetime game or they don't have all this blah, blah, blah. So you see in the space of 2 weeks how the goalposts have moved, how the point of conversation has shifted. And if you spin that forward, I really honestly believe if given the chance to keep Miami out of the playoff, they're going to do that. And it's shades of 2000 in the BCS all over again, where we beat Florida State, lost to Washington, and then, lost to Washington and then beat Florida State in that order. But Florida State made it to the BCS championship game, and Miami didn't. And that was the head-to-head comparison. Now, I know some people are saying, hey, what about Washington? And they could have been in that conversation. True, I'm going to give you that. But the conversation that was had and was publicized as being had was Miami and Florida State, but then you ignore the head-to-head. It's going to be one of those things. And I honestly, truly, and I want to be wrong. I really honestly do want to be wrong. But I see if Miami loses a game at all before the end of this calendar year, they're going to be, or before, Christmas, because, they're bowl games then. But if you lose a game before Christmas, that's this week to Virginia, next week at Pittsburgh on Black Friday, noon, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, or December 2nd in the ACC championship game, I don't think Miami's going to get in the playoffs. And that's just a closely held belief that I have. And I'll believe that I was wrong on that if we lose and then Miami does get in the playoffs. I just don't think that that's going to happen. And I hope that I'm wrong, but we'll see.
So the SEC winner's going to get in, the ACC winner's going to get in, and then the rest of it's up in the air. Let's say Oklahoma runs the table. They've got 1 loss. They're in. Okay, the Big Ten could have a 2-loss winner if Wisconsin loses the championship game. So I'm not saying that I would definitely say Miami should get in, because I am very much of the thought that these teams play in so much of a silo and don't cross don't play enough cross-sectional games for us to make like comparisons, that I like to see 4 conference champions make the field and think it's a travesty that we have 1 conference champion missing the field. But I'm just saying, if I just looked at resume, if Clemson barely beats Miami, that Miami could easily say we have as good a resume as that conference champion or that conference champion. Not that I would pull the trigger and put them in, because that would be difficult to do, because I understand the dynamics of the situation, in a conference championship in my mind should count for something big.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. But you know, Miami, if Miami were to lose a game, a singular game, before or then, even if it is the conference championship game, then Miami will be making that argument while playing in the Orange Bowl and watching other teams playing in the college football playoff. And you know, like I said, I could see that. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about having 2 lost teams jump up. CBS Sports even projected that there could be two lost teams, and one of them not being a conference champion, that make it into the college football playoff. So, you know, you're starting to see some things go around with that. So yeah, I really just see, unless Miami's undefeated, we're going to be on the outside looking in. So just like it said in the movie Major League, I guess that just means we're going to have to go win the whole damn thing.
That's it.
That's it.
Miami, Clemson in a few weeks, but before that, there's work to do against Virginia first off, and then a trip to Pitt. Cam Underwood, State of the U. We try to do this just about every week, talking Miami football, so this is the place to catch us here on YouTube at Mark Rogers TV, but most specifically, Miami fans, you got to catch Cam on State of the U. So you take it from here, Cam, and send us out, because you do the best pitch possible.
Yeah, I mean, the work speaks for itself, really. So stateoftheu.com, facebook.com/the state of the U. Also follow me on Twitter at the state of the U, or at Underwood Sports is my personal account. Basketball season is getting underway, so we have basketball content. Baseball team just put up their schedule for 2018 today, so I posted about that, and front to back, wall-to-wall coverage about the football team, because in case you missed the conversation, mine is 9-0 and hopefully headed to the college football playoff. And regardless of the results, we're going to be there for you. So check us out at stateoftheu.com, and we'll see you.